And here I am, man, this is it. This is like I'm interviewing to become a head coach in the NFL, and I am having Happy Meal cheeseburgers and KFC coleslaw.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you could have had other jobs with other teams with a more prestigious title, yet you decided to become quarterbacks coach for Parcells.
The challenge, it wasn't a challenge. Short-sightedness of me at the time, being young and not knowing any better. You know, Arizona was an opportunity to possibly go and call plays. Maybe Tampa Bay with John again to help there. There were a few of these teams that looked attractive, and then with Bill, it was just undefined. You know, it might be coordinator, it might be assistant head coach. There was a little bit more of a leap of faith, and at the time, my wife said to me, she's like, well, this is a no-brainer, you go with Bill. And she was right, and I wasn't. I was looking at it more like, well, I'm going to be able to run the offense. And so that decision to go to Dallas was like going to graduate school or law school. You know, it was more than just worrying about if you're calling plays or worrying about if you're the coordinator by title. You know, it was getting a chance to be a part of some of the stuff that made him so special, and it definitely was the right decision.
And the hindsight's obviously 2020. It seems like another decision your ex-wife Beth was spot on at.
She definitely was.
Well, and discouraging you from taking the Raiders job. And so I want to take you to the interview with the late Raiders owner Al Davis.
Yeah.
From walking in the room to ordering food all the way to Disney World.
Everyone in our league knew Al was one of those imposing figures. Number one, he was extremely smart. He was the only owner that had been a head coach, a general manager, a commissioner of another league. So his product knowledge of the league was unbelievable. And it was 2003, and Bill had come to see me, Coach Parcells, and told me, hey, Al called. They sent the request in. I think you're going to have a chance to get this job if you want it. And I went out and interviewed there for one full weekend and then back again for 3 more days. And every time you went west like that, your time would be off. And so you'd look at the clock, and Al was a night owl. He preferred to stay up late and then come in late. But it was like 10:30 his time, and you're famished, you haven't eaten, you're having this interview, and there's a lot of energy required when you're interviewing with him, because it is the minute you're comfortable in one topic, he's off to the next.
And the biggest interview of your career, arguably.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But he is a difficult person to interview with. So he finally says, are you hungry? And I was like, yeah. And he called Jimmy, his assistant, and he goes, do you like cheeseburgers? You know, the kind at McDonald's. And I'm thinking, yeah. And I don't know if he's talking about Big Macs or quarter pound. But he's like, no, the cheeseburgers. I'm like, yeah. So he tells Jimmy, can you go get us some of those cheeseburgers and bring me some of the coleslaw? And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I have young kids at the time. McDonald's does not have coleslaw. They've got the cheeseburgers. And the assistant, to his credit, takes off and comes back. And he knew not to correct Al, but he had the KFC coleslaw and a bag of 10 McDonald's Lance cheeseburgers, the kind, you know, that our kids would get in a Happy Meal, but like 10 of them. And now it's 11 at night, and here I am, man, this is it. This is like I'm interviewing to become a head coach in the NFL, and I am having Happy Meal cheeseburgers and KFC coleslaw. I just remember leaving that whole thing thinking this is surreal. So that lasted for 3 days, and then we had a family vacation in Florida. I knew at that point I was going to get offered this job. I knew it had gone well. And we were staying at the Grand Floridian, and every night Al would call, and he would want to talk to me about who might be the coaching staff I'm putting together.
And this is despite knowing you're on vacation with the family.
Yeah, it was 9 o'clock,
yeah.
and it was a normal hotel room, so I went into the restroom and just sat. And on Thursday morning, Mike Lombardi, who was his GM at the time, and very much involved in the process, and a friend of mine, called and said, hey, look, Al wants to get you out here, like now. He wants to announce this. And I said, man, Mike, this vacation ends Sunday. I promised, you know, the family this trip. And this is all happening. We're at Animal Kingdom, and we were on that little train ride, and I remember Mike saying, well, you need to call him then, at least try to explain to him your timetable or when you can be back here. We go into, I can remember like it was yesterday, we go into the Rainforest Cafe and get lunch ordered, and I had to walk out, and outside the Rainforest Cafe, there's like these giant mushrooms, you know, like that are artificial. I remember here I am calling Mr. Davis underneath one of these mushrooms and explaining to him that I have to finish this vacation, and he understood. He said that I'll see you Sunday PM. So Sunday morning, we had our little character breakfast. It was Winnie the Pooh. I flew back to Dallas, unpacked, got everyone situated, and then repacked, you know, with some more formal wear, and flew back out to Oakland. And here it was again, you know, having one of these late night meals, and every one of these interviews with him, each evening was like historic, the topics we'd hit on. But if I ever wrote about that, it would be breakfast with Winnie, dinner with Al.
You go to bed Tuesday night thinking you're taking the job. What happens?
I have a Raiders suit in my closet.
What happens Wednesday that changes your mind?
First, Bill calls me. He's in Jupiter, and he just said, hey, I want to talk to you not as your head coach. I want to talk to you like a father.
Bill Parcells.
Yeah. And he was very honest with this conversation. He said, there's a number of people that you're very close with that have given you advice on this decision. You know, John Gruden had been in Oakland, and he knew Bill Callahan, a number of guys that were close to me had said, it's not the right time. You know, it's hard to hear that when it's a head coaching job, though, and you're young. And so he asked me to tell him what they all said, and I told him, and then he said, well, put me in that line with them. It's not the right job. And I felt like that was the first conversation we had, as opposed to we really discussed the pros and cons of the job and the concerns about it. And then Jerry called shortly thereafter. I actually went and saw Jerry at his house, and I've said this, I said it before.
Jerry Jones,
the owner of the Cowboys. If he's the last person you see when you're making the decision, then you're probably staying.
Why?
He's a tremendous businessman. He's got a great way about him. Someone to this day I would say is a close friend, and he didn't commit or promise a job there as a head coach. Obviously, he reworked a contract, and I knew this whole time for the family. We had just been there for 1 year in Dallas and really grown accustomed to it. It was like the last chance to hit the brakes, and we did that on that Wednesday. I probably drove 100 miles an hour all the way till I saw the falling rock. I kept ignoring the signs, that said, stop, don't, and I kept driving fast because it was an opportunity, and then finally, at the very end, I made a good decision.
I just didn't think, under the circumstances, that they had been through some coaches. It had been pretty much in flux there. Mr. Davis was getting older. I just didn't think it was the right shot for Sean to try. Now, do I think it would have worked? I'd say the chances are 50-50. I don't think it was the best situation he could have gotten into, and I try to make him aware of that. When I thought he was more so, I didn't really think he would take the job.
You didn't?
Well, I didn't think he was going to take it, but when you get offered one of these, it's hard not to.
Right.
And so I just...
And it was a Tuesday night. He goes to bed, has told his wife he's accepting the job. Wednesday, speaks to you on the phone, meets with Jerry Jones. What is it about that call and that meeting that you think changed his mind?
Well, I tried to make the point, listen, we like you here. I think you're going to get another chance somewhere. And I'm reiterating, I didn't think it was the best situation at that time for him. And I try to tell him that. Now, we try to encourage him to stay. And we did some things with his contract, but that's a common thing. When you don't want to lose somebody, you don't want to lose an employee, you know, we do it.